Have you played Pick 6 from DraftKings yet? What are you waiting for? You better get on it. The playoffs are here and time is running out. As the official daily fantasy sports partner of the NFL, DraftKings does fantasy sports like no one else. Play for better payouts on Pick 6. It's super easy to get started. Select two or more players, choose if they'll have more or less of a stat like touchdowns, yardage, sacks, and more. Pick 6 is available in most states including Missouri, California, Texas, Georgia, and more. And DraftKings is making it even sweeter for the first timers. New Pick 6 customers play $5, get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Win more cash on Pick 6. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app and use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to play $5, get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Only on DraftKings Pick 6. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 is not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. One per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 30 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
Episode 96 of the Habs Culture podcast. My name is Justin Schwartz, alongside Liam Baum. The last week in Montreal Canadiens land has been quite interesting. A lot of huge matchups, a lot of interesting games. So just to recap quickly, Thursday, January 16th, the Habs went into Dallas, beat them convincingly by a score of 3-1. Jakob Dobes was in nets. Great game by him. Followed by a game on Saturday night against the Leafs, which I really want to talk about, Liam. I think that's one that we both want to talk about. Unfortunately, lose that one 7-3 at home, followed by probably one of the crazier games of the season against the Rangers in Montreal with a win by a score of 5-4 in overtime, goal from Patrick Laine. And then the Habs are back in Montreal, stay in Montreal, beat Tampa 3-2. Interesting game, to say the least. And then travel to Detroit last night and lose by a score of 4-2. That game wasn't a great one. We'll dissect all these 5 games. But Liam, this last week has been quite important for the Canadiens. You can argue that last night's game against Detroit was probably one of the more important ones, considering it's a division game. It's another team that's in the race for that wild card spot. And you know what? They just didn't look good. But let's talk about these 5 games as a whole. Your thoughts, your comments. What do you have to say?
Yeah, so just going back to last episode, we gave our predictions for the past 4 or 5 games. We didn't do Detroit, and I was the one who was correct in the end. 3-1 for the Canadiens. But yeah, no, you're right. Unfortunately, the Red Wings game was a big one to lose, but got to give credit where credit's due. The Habs beat the Rangers, who are right there in the mix with them, as well as the Lightning, who Montreal is just 1 point behind, I believe, maybe 3 now. I can't remember if Tampa played yesterday, but either way, they got 2 big wins. The Leafs one was a bit disappointing to lose after such a great start, and then we'll get into the Detroit game. That one was probably one of the worst ones in a long time, but hopefully the Habs can respond in this next coming streak.
I think that's what's going to be important for them. I think it's the fact that they're going to have to respond if they want to stay in the mix in that wild card spot or in either wild card spot. I think at the end of the day, clearly they're a bit gassed. And the truth is that we can't expect them to win every single game. I did think that game last night was going to be, I wouldn't call it a statement game, but we have beat Detroit twice already this season. And I thought it was going to be one of those that we go in there convincingly and take that one. Like the fact that the Canadiens were on the road doesn't help, but Montembeault had a great game against Tampa, and he had a great game last night, all things considered. Yeah. I mean, he did face 45 shots. He led in 4 goals, but he did face 45 shots, which is another conversation. But look, Saturday night against New Jersey in Montreal is a huge game because I think that the Canadiens don't have a lot of margin for error. And I don't think that down the stretch they can be losing 2-3 games in a row, which I know is a lot to ask, but it's the truth, right?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it's just whoever, I mean, this is just normal to say, but whoever wins the most games is getting in. And it's like you lose one and you drop a lot of spots. I mean, you go on a little bit of a streak and you're sitting in a divisional spot. So it's going to be a really crazy end to the season. We've talked about it a lot. You're bringing up some stats right now if we want to go over those quickly, but I just want to talk about a bit of a goalie conundrum right now. Obviously, Montembeault, great game against Tampa, faced a ton of shots yesterday. I think he finished better than he started, but Dobes has been hot, and the question is, do we want to play Dobes a little bit more, give Monty a break? So I've been really enjoying watching Dobes. I think Montembeault deserves some time off, but I think there's a bit of a goalie question there. I don't know if you agree.
I'm going to go back to last week, Liam, and I'm going to tell you right now that I absolutely didn't believe in any way, shape, or form that this was even a conversation. I didn't. I didn't think it was a conversation. I thought at the end of the day, to even suggest that Montembeault was not suited to be the starter of this team after the last 3 or 4 years where he's been very above average on a team that has finished consistently fifth to last or lower in the last 3 seasons is impressive in and of itself. But here's my suggestion. I don't think we should write it off completely that Dobes deserves more games, considering that this is a league that is momentum based. If you can get hot at the right time, then you're probably going to prevail. And I think that this reminds me a little bit if you go back to the Senator situation with the Hamburglar, and obviously it's on a different level, but their goalie got hot, the Hamburglar got hot at the right time, and it led them into the playoffs. And I'm not saying that Dobes is necessarily the Hamburglar and that situation is completely the same, but Jakub Dobes is 5-0, 4 of those wins coming on the road. The disparity in the numbers is pretty significant between him and Montembeault. Granted, Montembeault has played way more games, but you ride the hot hand in this league. We've talked about it on so many occasions that in the playoffs, it's not about who has the best goalie, it's who has the hottest goalie. And
Yeah, for
yeah,
sure. And I think just jumping in there, especially since Montembeault has already played so many games, and the Canadians were you could tell they're gassed, and I'm sure Montembeault's gassed as well. So giving him a bit of a break and letting Dobes play a few more, maybe that's the trend coming up. And I want to bring up another goalie situation, and it's the team we're playing against next in the New Jersey Devils, who just lost Jacob Markstrom for 4 to 6 weeks. And back when we traded Jake Allen to the Devils, there was a condition within one of those picks that we received that if Allen started, I believe it was half the season or 40 games, something like that, the Canadians would go from receiving the Devils' third-round pick to their second-round pick. Considering Markstrom is now going to miss 4 to 6 weeks, and who knows, that's just the timeline. Maybe it's even longer. This could be beneficial for the Canadians if Allen is getting all these starts.
no, you're 100% right. You're 100% right. We'll take every pick that we can get. And the truth is that we'll take any asset that we can get, which is also an interesting conversation to have considering that the deadline is approaching pretty quick now. I think if it's not the end of February, it's the beginning of March. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I think it's the start of March.
Right. So that will be interesting. We've talked a couple weeks ago about the situation and whether the Canadians are in a buy or sell situation. If I were to give you that situation, Liam, and say that the Canadians are playing about 500 hockey, they're maybe 1 point or 2 points out of the second wild card, or they're even in that wild card. Do you suggest buying, or do you say status quo?
I think the plan that Hughes and Gordon have set up is going to be followed regardless of where we are in the standings. But I also don't see a need of going out and buying the biggest free agent, getting the biggest fish for a rental when the Habs are obviously they're playing very well and they're beating good teams, but you got to still consider that this is a inexperienced team. They haven't made the playoffs in 3 years, and this is probably isn't their year. I mean, I truly believe the Habs can beat anyone when they play their game, but do you really want to give up your future? And I think that's what Ken Hughes has been talking about a lot recently, is that what's the point right now of going out, potentially ruining some of the chemistry that has been built up this whole year, even continuing from the end of last season? What's the point of going out and getting that guy? Of course, he's going to be a good player who you pick up, but is it really worth spending your future picks and potentially future prospects in order to make a run when maybe it's not your year.
Yeah, I think it would be a huge mistake to. I wouldn't say mistake. I just don't think it's the right route to buy at the deadline.
But
I think
let me just ask you, where do you see a hole in this lineup that needs to be fixed, especially
I,
like in the top 6 or top 4D?
I don't. I genuinely don't. That's I think where I was going with that, and I think you kind of
Hmm.
just hit it on the head. There is that if you were to bring someone in, whether as a rental or whether as a guy that can maybe potentially be in the lineup next year, I still think that it would be tough to argue that any of those routes would be the right ones to take. I think that let's put it this way. Heineman comes back in, let's say, 2.5 weeks, give or take. He takes that spot from, well, we already sent back Owen Beck. So now Pez is back. Like, I don't understand.
Yeah, I mean, there's a hole there. I think Pizzetta isn't necessarily the best fourth liner, and okay, if you want to go out at the
Right.
deadline and
But
pick up a fourth liner,
no, but that wasn't even my point. My point was that let's just assume Heineman is there.
yeah, yeah.
So then what happens here is that are we going to all of a
Hmm.
sudden put Dvorak in the press box? Like,
That's yeah.
is Gallagher or Anderson taking a seat? Is Armia taking a seat? Like, I don't think that's what they really want to do, and at what cost, right? Like, there's been rumors floating around that going to pick up a guy like Simon Nemitz at the deadline would be a great move because you can give up a guy like Anderson or give up a guy like Gallagher and retain some salary and have them play a prominent role for a team like New Jersey that probably struggles in the grit department. And I think that is a deadline move that makes a lot of sense. Does it allow you to compete quicker? Yes. Does it solve a potential issue in the future? It doesn't solve a potential issue, but it definitely bolsters a defensive core that is already looking pretty promising. And you're not giving up assets for a short-term patch. You're giving up assets for something that could benefit in the long term. And I think to go out and get a guy like Brock Nelson or Taylor Hall might be interesting because he's an expiring UFA, but maybe just sign him in the offseason if he's willing to at that point. My point is that do those moves benefit the Habs? I don't think so.
No, I agree with you. And again, if the Canadians want to go out and move one of their pending UFAs, then I'm all for that. But don't go out and try to fill that hole that you just got rid of because you feel the need to. You know what I mean? Like, don't go out and trade Savard and then go pick up another vet D man just because we're potentially going on a run. So all that to say is, I just don't see the value in expending future picks for a rental while the Canadians have built up such a great chemistry as of this moment. Who knows what's going to happen in the next 15 games? Anything can change, anything can flip the complete opposite way, but at this moment now, my answer to that question is stay with the plan. If you want to move one of those four pending free agents, whether that's Anderson, Evans, Armia, Savard, pull the trigger, but I don't think necessarily making a move and then just trying to replace that hole is the right move to make before the deadline. I just don't see
No,
it.
I 100% agree. I 100% agree. I think it's going to be very interesting. I think that the idea of being conservative at the deadline is going to be one that might pay dividends in the long run. We can't forget who the Canadians have in their pipeline, who they're going to be adding to the roster next year, and what spots are there really to go around, right? I mean, we can argue that ultimately Anderson and Gallagher are probably not part of the long term plan, yet they still have 2 more years after this one on their contracts. Dvorak is a UFA. Savard, UFA, Armia, UFA. Those are positions that I believe that you can build in the offseason, or that you not build in the offseason, that you can acquire in the offseason through free agency. You don't build your team through free agency, but you add those um whatever, the fillers on the fourth line or third
Yeah.
lines in the offseason. But one guy I will bring up quickly because we're another week closer to the deadline, another week removed from our prior conversation about Jake Evans. And we had originally compared his contract to, or the potential contract to Ridley Gregg, which is about, correct me if I'm wrong, but about 4x4.
Yeah, it was
Four,
approximately that, a little bit less than 4 mil, I
right,
think.
like 3.75 or
Yeah.
something. But anyway, I've heard some rumblings, or not rumblings, but people suggesting on Tony Marinaro's podcast, whether it was Pierre Maguire saying, sign him to like 7 years, with less AAV.
So
And
the Colton Sissons contract,
right,
8 years, 3 mil.
right, something of the sort. Like just give him the term, lock him up. He'll understand. He'll probably understand that to play longer in this Habs roster will probably pay off in his case. Like, is that something that you would explore, or is that something that you think is just I wouldn't say unreasonable, but maybe just unrealistic?
I think it's a little bit risky. I mean, obviously the risk is balanced with the low AAV, but in 8 years, Evans is going to be 36, I believe. And at that point, obviously the cap will be much higher than it is right now, but it's going to be hard to get out of a contract like, well, maybe not because the AAV is low, but when he's like 34, if he drops off, hopefully he doesn't, but you're just kind of going to be stuck with some dead cap. And if you have to buy him out, it kind of sucks. So, I mean, I'm open to it if the AAV is low, but I don't know if I'd go as far as 8 years. Maybe 5, 6.
I think that in either case, it's a very low risk contract, right? Like, I think we could both agree that even if you do sign him for 7 years, 8 years, whatever the case may be, like, are we really going to sit here and say that the deciding factor for the Canadians is cap situation or troubles is because we have a guy like Jake Evans locked up at $2.5 or $3 million a year? Like,
Yeah,
I think
probably
that
not.
I think that if we're gonna blame it on that, then we have bigger issues. But I
Hmm.
think that either way, whether we lock him up for 4 years or 7 years or 8 years, whatever the case may be, it's a necessity. It's a must. And to move him at the deadline, in my opinion, is a huge mistake. We said it last time. We'll say it again. Look, I don't know if there's even a guy that or compensation that someone can approach Kent Hughes and say, look, this is what we have to offer. I don't even know if there's anything that they could possibly like. Is there anything that's too good to resist?
Like, would you take uh, a first round pick that's very late, so like borderline second? So I'd say between like 26 and 32.
Sure.
Are you taking a first round pick for
Straight
Jake
up.
Evans? Yeah,
Straight
straight
up.
up.
No. No. I'll tell you why. Because if you look at NHL players and the success rate of those back end first round picks, excuse me, something that I spoke about with my friend is that at the end of the day, those guys usually are third or fourth liners, bona fide third or fourth liners with a success rate of hitting to be a first or second liner, which is very, very low. And the reason that those guys end up being third or fourth liners is truthfully because there's that sunk cost of believing that you don't want to waste that first round pick. Like, if you take a guy in the first round, you took him for a reason, and at that point, you're going to have him play games. So
Mhm.
if that's the case, and that player doesn't end up panning out, and plus we have so many assets anyways, and guys, we almost have so much internal competition and a logjam in our
System.
within our 12 forwards exactly. So my point is that are we really going to pass up on Jake Evans, which you know what you're getting? You know what you're getting in Jake Evans, a third or fourth liner that plays significant minutes for this team, wins draws, kills penalties better than most people in the league for a chance at maybe hitting in the back end of the first round?
I can agree with you.
I
I
don't know.
mean, a first round pick is always like that shiny
It's
toy
a
that
shiny new
that you're
toy. It's
just
a
that
shiny
you're
new
staring
toy.
at. Yeah, but then once you make the pick, I don't want to throw out names. I don't want to throw anyone under the bus because they're still young players. But you look at a guy like Messar. He was picked 25th, I believe, and it's like, when is he going to take that next step? When is he actually going to be able to play on the Canadiens? So you're taking a shot. The Canadiens are already the youngest team in the league, by the way. So moving one of your vet guys, because Evans is a vet on this team. He's 28 years old, turning 29, and he already provides a huge presence to this team that's hard to replace and hard to just find.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I don't think you can argue that at all. I think that that's probably the route that they should take. Is it the one that they will take? I have no clue. I think that they should stay status quo though. Keep Jake Evans, lock him up, make him a part of this team because the season that he's having this year is, I would say, unlike any others that he's had in his career. And he's a seventh round
Mhm.
pick. He's worked his way. He's a 2014 draft pick. He deserves to be in this roster. And I rather, like you said, and even if you look at, the last thing I'll say is that if you look at some of those Boston draft picks, right? Miss after miss after miss after miss after miss in the back end of that first round. Now, granted, there was some significant talent there, but it just goes to show you that nothing is guaranteed. And when you have something that you know what you're getting, the grass isn't always greener. So
Yeah.
we could leave it at that.
I sent you a
Yeah.
link to the Canadian stats in the last 5 games. Let's just go over those quickly. Let's take a look at who's producing, who's not, and maybe who's due for a goal. So, as we can see in the last 5 games, Patty Line, Patty Ice, as they call him,
Yes.
apparently.
Did you listen to that?
I did. It was great, honestly.
I didn't listen to the whole thing.
It's nice to hear the personal stories and get a bit of a character. Because Line, not that he's a cold guy, he's just, you don't really see much of a reaction out of him for anything. So he was laughing a little bit with the boys on Spit and Chicklets. But Patty Line leading the Canadians right now in points. All of a sudden, he's getting dime after dime. So many assists now, which is nice to see. And finally, some 5-on-5 points. So 6-5 for him. Hudson obviously still going strong. That -8, don't even worry about it. Bad game against the Leafs.
Can I talk about that for a second?
Go ahead.
There's two things about that game against the Leafs that really bother me. Not even the fact that we lost, not even the fact that we were up 3-0 and lost. It's the fact that you go to Twitter.
Yeah.
Lane Hudson is having a career year from a point perspective as a rookie, breaking record after record after record. And look, his defense isn't, he's a defenseman. His defense isn't going to be the best in the league, but I can find you 30 other guys that are not the best, that are not amazing defensively, but that contribute in other ways.
Yep.
And yet the only thing that people are focusing on was the fact that he was -5. That's the only thing that people focus on. It's unbelievable to me.
It's typical Leafs fans. They're upset that they don't have a defenseman like this. Sure, you guys have Morgan Riley. Really nice. They're just jealous. No one was talking about Hudson's 9-game point streak or whatever. Even before that, the 7-game point streak. It's all until he has the bad game. And that's just typical jealousy from Leafs fans. Let's not get into it. But Hudson is doing his thing, continuing to get points, 4 assists. And again, I'm going to bring this up because it's such a stupid argument. I see it every day that people call him the secondary assist merchant. But half the time, he's literally creating the play. And we've talked about this so many times just between us. But of course, he's going to get secondary assists. He's a defenseman. He's moving the puck up the ice. But half the time, the goal is coming because of what he does.
Yeah, it's honestly such a misconception. It's usually a misconception that's easy to fall into when you don't actually watch or pay attention. I mean, the truth is that from on the back end, he's a game changer as a rookie, as a 20-year-old in this league. There's no denying that. And the truth is that it's very easy to focus on the little bad thing or the one bad thing that goes wrong when everything else is going right. So we'll leave that with Hudson. But just to continue what you were saying there, Suzuki 4-5, Armia 3-5. You love to see that as a third/fourth line player. Kirby Doc looking
much
better. Lot better, a lot better. Dvorak kind of finally, I don't know if you want to call it breaking open the floodgates there, but finally
last
getting
2 games. Yeah,
hey, you take that. Gallagher 3 points of they played a really, really strong game against the Rangers.
Yes.
Dvorak, Gallagher, and Anderson, and then you have Goalie 3-5, who's a +6. Love to see that.
Yeah,
Newhook been buzzing. I find he's been buzzing.
When
he's really, really good.
When he has the puck, starting at our blue line, the Canadians' blue line, and he can just turn on the jets and go end to end. He splits the D. It's amazing. He just needs to finish that. He'll be on every highlight reel ever if he could just score one of those goals where he dangles through the D.
Incredible.
But the shot the other day, outstanding against Tampa. He's been looking really good. I'll continue from here. Slavkovsky finally producing a little bit too. 3 goals, 5 assists. We go down a little bit. Caulfield, no goals in his last 5. He's due. It's coming soon. He just has to get on the board, and he's gonna. But the good thing about this is the Canadians still went 3-2 in their last 5, and he didn't score a single goal. So
you go.
Speaks about the depth. Evans also a huge goal against Tampa, and that about wraps it up. Matheson needs to get on the board. I don't know what's happening here. 0 points.
Honestly, he's lower than Beck, so I didn't even think he could go lower. He's actually lower than Dobes somehow in stats. But
that's rough.
Yeah, that's when you know. But look, I mean, I think overall, last 5 games have been a true testament as to what this team will probably go through in the last 30 games. You're gonna have a lot of ups, a lot of downs, and you're gonna have to meet somewhere in the middle in terms of consistency to actually secure a spot in the playoffs. Do I think they can do it? Yes. Do I think that they have the culture and the capabilities and the skill to do it? Yes. It's gonna be a question of rally the troops, 30 games, buy into the ideology, buy into the game plan, and stick to it. And I think that what you pointed out about Caulfield going scoreless through 5 games, but the Canadiens are still 3-2, is very, very true. It goes to show that right now the Canadiens are not depending on 1 or 2 guys to win games, which I know that's not what hockey is about in general, but it just goes to show that when Caulfield has 2 assists in 5 games and he's a -2, the Canadiens still have a positive record. And that's a guy that you have on your first line, first power play, and you most of the time you're depending on for a big goal. So that's what I think is interesting.
Yeah, no, you're definitely correct in those regards. Let's take a look at the upcoming game against the New Jersey Devils. Going to be facing Jake Allen. Let's give our predictions here. Start us off, Justin.
I just want to point something out. Money Puck says that this is a big game for the Habs. Why is it a big game for the Habs? Well, according to them, and we're going based off their stats, I'm not going to tell you how they calculate it or why they calculate it or what's going on there. Apparently, if the Canadiens beat the New Jersey Devils in regulation, it boosts their odds by 6.3% to make the playoffs, which is huge, to 40.9%.
We need to look at that chart again with the playoff percentages per team. I better not see Ottawa at 65%. I'll be livid.
I'm gonna pull it up right here.
So context. Let me.
Here we go.
Yeah, the chart is nice. So just for context, the other episode we took a look at the percentage, or I guess the odds of wildcard teams making the playoffs. Oh yeah, this is nice. Ottawa was at 66. Maybe zoom in a little. The Senators were at 66% to make the playoffs when the Habs were 1 point back, and the Habs had a what was it, like a 10% chance, 20% chance. So they're still so high. Why? So as we can see here, Ottawa is at 57? Yeah, 57.2%, while the Canadiens are at 34.7, so it's much higher than last time. But I'm just trying to, like, how is Columbus at 16? They're in a playoff spot.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. I think I'm sure that this is probably calculated based off of remaining schedule. I know that the Habs have a relatively easy remaining schedule, which is great to hear. I don't know about the other teams. But yeah, I mean, look, like 34.7% right now, with the potential of boosting to 40% to make the playoffs if they win on Saturday night against New Jersey in Montreal against a struggling Jake Allen. A struggling
Devils team. They haven't been very good recently.
Yeah. So I think that this game, look, my prediction is that the Habs are going to win. I don't, again, call me biased, whatever. I just think that they need to demonstrate that they are capable of taking on these bigger teams, specifically one in the Metro Division who is struggling, and take advantage of that. You're on home ice. You have the best crowd in hockey. You play in the best building in hockey, and your team is gelling. Like, this is it.
Saturday night
at the Bell Center doesn't get any better than that. I'm predicting 2 goals and an assist for Caulfield, and I'm predicting a 5-3 win for the Canadiens, and I'm going to assume that Jakob Dobes gets his 6th win.
Nice. I like it. I was going to go with Caulfield, so I'm going to switch it up. I do like Caulfield to score regardless, but I'm going to... Should I go back to Slavkovsky? Nah.
I mean, what did he have? Did he have 3 goals this week?
He had 3. I said 5. I said 5.
Actually said we saw
actually
him
4
right after 4, so he had 3 in 4. He didn't score.
You're right, yeah, because he didn't score. He didn't score against. Yes, not a bad prediction. Not a bad prediction. I'm gonna say Kirby
was flying with Josh Anderson after the Toronto game.
Yeah, true. It looked pretty good. It was brewing. Then it kind of fell off. But I'm gonna say Kirby stays hot. I'm gonna say that line stays hot. Actually, I'm gonna say the Habs win 6-2.
6-2.
And the second line with Newhook, Dak, and Laine are producing 3 of those goals.
Love it. We'll keep it at that for now.